Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for joining. One thing I'll say before I get started, it's great to see so many people because I've been at a number of both SDN and FE events lately and cloud events, and it seems that this is where a lot of the interest is. And I think that's happening for a reason. I think I've been working in, well, what we now call cloud computing for a long time, and I think part of it is because the networking hasn't developed as quickly maybe in terms of function and feature as the compute side. It's probably much more reliable, much more robust. That's where all the focus has been on networking, but on the automation orchestration features, it hasn't quite been. So that's why I'm primarily going to talk about how we think that NFV and SDN is going to help the enterprise when we look at that. So what we're talking about when we're talking about cloud-based network services is basically a way to automate, orchestrate as much as possible everything that the network is doing. And I know that that includes what we call SDN, which is defining configuration, defining topology, defining routing, and the relationships between different networks, and NFV over on the things that are happening within the network, how we're filtering things, how we're forwarding things, how we're planning for resilience and things like that. So that's what we mean when we talk about cloud-based network. As far as the impact that we think that this is going to have, it's funny, usually the analysts are much more aggressive. Usually the analysts, one of their jobs is actually to push things forward, to create demand. This is a case where the analysts, I think, are a little more conservative, and I think that's because they're taking their cues from what's actually happening. On our side, when we're talking to our customers and we ask them about, are you looking at NFV? Are you looking at SDN? Is this something that you think is going to help you? Are you planning? Do you have any pilot projects? We get a really big number of customers telling us that they are looking at this, that they want to work on this. So I think what this tells us, again, is that we're in the nascent phase of this industry and of this technology. People are really interested in it. They think that there's something there for them, but they realize that the benefits are still to come. So when we look at the wave of how virtualized networking is happening, I think this is almost the same if you consider computing in general, just that there would be a phase shift between them. Computing might have been a little ahead of this. It went through this change from centralization to decentralization to centralized again, and that's actually what networking is doing now. We've gone from very tightly controlled networks where everything was defined at the center. We've, the client-server phase, like we heard earlier in the earlier presentation, served to move control, move orchestration of the networks out to the edge. And I think what we're seeing happening now is things are coming back into the center. We're looking for a way to programmatically control these things, automatedly control these things, no longer leaving all of the decisions and the execution to happen out on the edge. So why are these things happening? I think what's happening is that things are really changing faster than they ever have. All of these things that are listed here continually go up, and they're going up exponentially. When we think of the data demands that each of us has just as a consumer, they've changed radically in the last 10 years, and even significantly in the last 3. I think the latest thing that I saw, the latest big explosion that people expect, are things like real-time video streaming. Is anybody using or have used or looked at least this thing called Periscope or Meerkat? So it's still an early adopter sort of thing, but it's these kinds of services, whether it's the personal use of video or some of the machine-to-machine things that we saw in the previous presentation, these are the things that are really pushing the network forward. And this way that we're building networks now, where yes, they're very robust, they're resilient, they're very performant, but they aren't very agile. And that's the thing that really needs to change to help. So like I said earlier, what we're seeing happening in network is the same thing that's happened already in computing. We're looking to go from a way where things were, again, resilient, in very good shape in that sense, but a little slower to react, to a place where things are more automatic, programmatic, I'd say, to where individuals, humans, don't need to be the ones monitoring information and making decisions, but we've actually got machines looking what other machines are doing, making those decisions for us. So what that concretely means for us in the enterprise is taking a lot of the functions that have often been in many different boxes inside of the server closet in the enterprise and turn them into services, move them into the network. So take all of these services, these security services, availability services, authentication, firewall, all of these things, take these boxes out of the closet in the branch office or even in the data center and push them into the network. And we get a few different kinds of benefits. On the one hand, we don't have so many physical boxes to manage. We don't have so much upfront capital expenditure when we want these features. But I think even more importantly are the programmatic benefits that we get. Once we can use a network where all of these different features that we used to have, instead of being requested by a person making a purchase order to a service provider, who hopefully quickly, but often not, turns that into a service, what we're hoping for is that the application that needs those changes can actually make that request on its own. What we're trying to create is a situation where, through an API into the service provider, the application itself can say, I need these clause parameters, I need this kind of bandwidth, I need this kind of logical topology to be able to speak to other members of my permanent or ephemeral group that I need to talk to get my work done. Please, network, create that for me. And what we get from that, obviously, is really increased agility, flexibility, and what I talked about earlier, the cost efficiency. We take all of that capital expenditure and turn it into OpEx. So what the analysts say that we're looking at as far as the number of these middle boxes, these boxes that are embedded into the network, but in some sense they aren't the network. The number of them grows almost as quickly as the number of routers on the network. And that's a dangerous place to be, because that means that we're deploying multiples of devices every time we roll out either a new office or a new data center. Obviously, one of the things that we're interested in doing is minimizing latency, and that's why within the NFV-powered network that we're running, we're slowly pushing these things out to different points of presence on our network, currently up to 50, but we're trying to get these services as close as possible to the edge. The importance is to minimize the latency. Again, like we heard earlier in the earlier presentation, minimize the latency from the branch office to the devices or to the network that's providing those services and increasing the performance. Again, like I said, what we're really looking at doing is taking all of these services that used to be in the network, driving them from an SDN platform, and what we really want to happen, and we're part of the way there as an industry and as a company, is create a situation where we expose the creation, the deletion of these resources in a couple of different ways. Some companies might only be as far along the maturity cycle, if you will, that they're ready to use it with humans interacting with the system. So they need a portal. They need a way to go in and maybe subscribe to some WAN optimization or to subscribe to some security services, whatever it might be. As industries and companies get further along in that maturity cycle, they'll be ready from their applications. They'll actually be able to build into their applications the ability to request to the network. Like I mentioned earlier, I need these parameters, I need this bandwidth, I need these services. It might tell them that they need firewalling services or IPS or a number of other services. Again, the intent here is really to take humans out of the equation and let machines talk to machines to make these decisions. So a couple of case studies that I'll present that are customers that we've worked with. So this is a customer. It's a European chemicals company, and I'm sorry I can't use the name. I'd like to, but they weren't ready for that yet. We're actually working on a case study, so check back on our website and we'll have something on this soon. But they're a classic case that we see these days. We all know that in the European market, times have been tough in the last several years, and many companies' growth markets are not their home market. This is a classic case. This is a company that saw that their growth is no longer within the Benelux or even within Europe, that they needed to grow outside. So they're what we call a medium-sized MNC, medium-sized multinational company. They're doing things that only multinationals, very large multinationals, used to do, but they're doing it now because they need to. That's the only way that they can expand. So 600-ish people company, 20 different country, 600 people, 20 different countries that they've expanded into. And because of the scale of the company that they are, they don't have IT people in every location. When they bring up a new location, they can't afford to have somebody there plugging in all of these middle boxes that I spoke of earlier, but they still need all of those services. They need unified communications. They need the stable network that'll provide that. They need secure communications between the different locations. So the real benefit for them was agility, being able to get these things up and running, and obviously the costs. They absolutely could not deploy a new person, a new IT person, to every one of the new locations that they're working in. So what they needed was a place where they could consolidate everything that they're using, even if the physical underlying network doesn't all belong to NTT. NTT are deploying an overlay on top of it, and that's what they see. That's the service that they perceive, and to them, that's what's important. So they've got one provider that they can go to when it's connectivity issues, when it's cloud computing issues, and when it's networking issues. Currently, they're interacting with this through a portal, but we're also trying to move them along in that journey and take them to a place where eventually they'll be able to do it programmatically. They'll be able to have their applications programmed, created in a way to where they can actually tell the network what it is that they need. So the next one is a larger company, 5,000 people, private banking company, and their challenges are a little different. What they're faced with is a very highly regulated environment. They've got a lot of compliance that they need to deal with, but they've got 150 different locations. They don't have a great IT staff, and they don't always have great connectivity in all of those places. So here's a place where we took a mix of our private network, coupled together with the transit network, the public IP network, put them together, built an overlay on top, and give them all the things, all the different services that they need in all of the different locations. So again, it gives them a great way to be able to react, to quickly deploy new offices, but also, again, controlling the costs. So as we look ahead, where we're going with this is we've got this network that we're automating as much as possible. We've also got a cloud computing platform that's very highly automated in 14 of these locations. And we're really putting these together, building what we call the elastic service infrastructure. So what we're looking at is a central controller that, depending on what the cloud platform needs, it tells the network what it needs. And that's the network within the data center, between one cloud data center and another, between the cloud data center and the customer premises, if they've got the right equipment on site. So again, we're building this machine out of all of these pieces, trying to treat the network in the same way that we've treated computing, trying to bring network along on that journey into a very, very automated place. And at the end of the day, what we're really doing, if you will, with NFV is creating sort of an app store for networking services. We're trying to take that old provisioning model where it took a human talking to another human with a purchase order with maybe a 2-week turnaround time, and turning that into really an administrative function, letting somebody go into a portal or issue an order through an API and instantly realize a change in the application and a change in the network that's going to directly benefit their business, that's going to let them win in terms of agility and in terms of in financial efficiency as well. So thanks very much for your attention. I wasn't able to go into a lot of detail with you today. I hope that's okay, but we're outside of the stand if you have any questions. So thanks very much.